Well, G.E. Galera, could I first of all thank Joe for the invitation to come. It's great to be in Glenties ta achas mór urim a bheith an seo live anocht. As always with Joe, you get not a lot of notice about these things. Sometimes they're loaded with all sorts of surprises, but it's always a delight to come here, and I'm really, really pleased to be here and honoured indeed to deliver the 10th John Hume lecture. John's a legend in Derry and Ireland and indeed the world, and he's here this evening with his wife Pat, who is also a legend in her own right. She's now Dr. Pat Hume. So many congratulations on that in the course of the last short while. Delighted also that Brian Friel is here and his wife Anne, another legend from Derry. You wonder why Derry's called legendary? It's full of legends. And of course the Reverend Harold Good. He was born in Derry, so he's entitled to the title legendary. And I'm really pleased that him and Clodagh are with us this evening. Prior to the peace process, I never knew Harold, but since the peace process, I have had an acquaintance with Harold and indeed many others within the Protestant churches. And I regard many of these people as some of my closest friends. We have worked very, very closely together, and I think we've achieved absolutely amazing things on behalf of our people. I'm being particularly praiseworthy of Harold tonight because he has a bag of fresh mackerel in the boot of his car. He knows that I love mackerel, and he caught them this morning, he assures me, in Ballycastle. So I'm looking forward to having a feed of those. I think the Tongus is here somewhere, so I'm very pleased that Mary Coughlan is here with us this evening. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Gardaí for getting me successfully out of Clonus today after the Ulster final. It was touch and go as to whether or not I was going to make it, but it's surprising what two guys on motorbikes can do. So that was absolutely wonderful. I was through this village 2 weeks ago, and I was at a birthday party 2 weeks today in Ardra, and I've mentioned this woman before. I made this woman's acquaintance whenever I was asked by a cousin of mine who's married to her granddaughter, would I phone her on her 100th birthday? And I did. And she said to me, I thought that's all I was doing. She said to me, you know, I hear you're speaking at the MacGill Summer School. I said, well, how did you find that out? Now, this woman lives in her own house in Ardra, healthy as a seat's right. I says, I am. She said, you know, that's only 10 miles from Ardra. So I got the bottle of brandy and the big bunch of flowers, and I came early and went down to the house, and I've known her ever since. I was back 2 weeks ago for her 104th birthday. She's now on her 105th year. Before I went the first time, I phoned her to find out where she was in Ardra. She says, just come down the main street. Come round by the chapel. There's a little laneway. Go down the laneway, there's a little bridge, go over the bridge, and I'm living in the pink house. The instructions were spot on. The amazing thing about her is that her sister lived across the road, or lives across the road, and she's 102. Yeah, and still does her own. John Hume's asking what age am I? Well, unfortunately for me, John, I was 60 in May. But her sister's 102 and she still does a spot of gardening. So this woman's name is Molly Gallagher, and she's as sharp as a razor. She actually said to me, and the following day we had a meeting of the North-South Ministerial Council in Farmley, and she said to me, will you ask Dermot Ahern, the Minister for Justice, what he's doing about head jobs? So talk about being tuned in. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, I am very pleased to have been given the opportunity to deliver this year's John Hume Lecture. When I was in Liverpool this week for the awarding of the City of Culture title to Derry, I was very, very pleased to see both Pat and John in Derry's Guildhall. And as everybody knows, that's an announcement of immense cultural and economic significance for the North West, and I believe also for our entire island. And I have no doubt that those who are passionate about the arts and culture in Ireland will rally to Derry's cause for 2013. And even before we came here tonight, I made a suggestion to Joe, which he might think about, that come 2013, maybe the Patrick MacGill John Hume Lecture should be delivered in Derry, where people would come to Derry and then come on to Glenties and Donegal for the rest of the week's proceeding. Joe looked at me in horror. He said, "Do you think I'm going to be around in 2013? I have no doubt that he'll be around in 2013. And I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I'm also very conscious that whilst the past week has brought a great result for Derry, we who are from Derry are deeply sensitive to the fact that the Buncrana area of Inishowen, a place which many people here know is very close to my heart, was plunged into unbearable grief and sadness with the deaths of 8 people, 7 of them young men, with their lives before them. And the 8th man, of course, Hugh Freeld, in his 60s. So on this occasion, I want to extend sympathy to the families and the people of Inishowen who suffered this appalling tragedy at around this time last Sunday evening. John Hume was vilified at the very beginning of the peace process, and Gerry Adams and I have always been vilified anyway, so we're used to it. But I think all of us have taken huge political risks and faced at times worse vilification in order to make a beginning to the Irish peace process. And for that enormous contribution, John Hume has rightly been honoured, and he continues to be recognised fittingly in this annual lecture. And I am very happy to join the list of speakers who have given the lecture and acknowledge again John Hume's pivotal role in helping to initiate and to build the peace process and all of the good that has flowed from that. The fundamental premise for that was that the status quo was not an option and that a process of change was required. The peace process moved us from the tragedy of conflict to an era of dialogue, negotiation and a new political dispensation. As a result, the political landscape in the North has been utterly transformed in recent years. The demilitarisation of society, the existence of fully functioning all-Ireland political institutions, and the transfer of powers on policing and justice from Britain to the North are all evidence that the peace process is delivering and that politics is working, and that all of this is a work in progress. However, there remains small groups and individuals who, it appears, cannot grasp the realities of Ireland in 2010. That is, that change has happened, that it is ongoing, and that it is unstoppable, and that the status quo they hanker back to is unacceptable. They can be found in the unrepresentative militarist factions who continue to carry out armed actions, and the criminal elements who operate under the cover of being bogus patriots. And I think this was graphically illustrated last week in Ardoyne, where it is widely believed that many of those who sat on the road wearing T-shirts, describing themselves as residents, not dissidents, told those who were anxious for a riot, many of them children, to do so only after they had left the road. Regrettably, the Orange Order also appear rooted to the past and unwilling to join with the rest of us in making the necessary compromises in the interest of peace and progress. They continue to refuse to talk to nationalists and to hold the rest of society to ransom over a tiny number of contentious parades out of thousands of loyal order marches each summer. The sectarianism played out on the streets of Belfast in recent days needs to be tackled, and I have long argued that the Orange Order themselves could transform relationships by taking a bold initiative, by thinking of the greater good, and by stepping forward and making their contribution to a new and better future. By dealing with the issue of contentious parades in a generous fashion, the Orange Order has the potential to build a new relationship with their Celtic neighbours, and my door remains open to them always. These issues are the legacies of an island emerging from 4 decades of conflict and point to the fact that Ireland needs a process of national reconciliation. The recent publication of the report of the Savile Inquiry into Bloody Sunday, the reaction of the new British Prime Minister David Cameron, and the exoneration of the 14 people murdered on the streets of my home city that day has the potential to be a defining moment in such a process. And I acknowledge also that Republicans caused much hurt during the conflict. I have always acknowledged that, and as a Republican leader, I accept my responsibilities both for the past and for building a new future, and importantly for ensuring that the truth about the past is told for the victims and survivors, but also to ensure that mistakes are not repeated in the future. And I repeat here tonight a call for the establishment of an independent international truth recovery process, one which is victim-centred and which can generate the confidence necessary for full participation. I, along with other Republican leaders, have made it clear that we will participate in such a process. We now need the same commitment from the British Government and indeed also from Unionist leaders. We need to go beyond simply telling the stories of the past 40 years. We need to examine the root causes of the conflict as well as the consequences. Within civic society across this island, we have much to share and I think much to learn from. One of the effects of the partition of our country has been the separate development of communities, whether on religious grounds in the north or between the communities north and south. Yet we all share common problems that really don't recognise any border. I believe that greater cooperation within civic society can bring about innovation, create change and promote best practice. In particular, we need to jointly address the issues of community regeneration, sustainable economic growth, environmental protection, sectarianism, racism, road safety, child protection and social inclusion. Again, I would ask, what more can civic society do to deepen our understanding and our actions in addressing these issues? While highlighting areas for additional activity, I would also like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to those in civic society who have and continue to be vital to that social cohesion in Ireland, and in some cases they are the very threads that hold our society together. And I'm thinking of the community sector, the trade union movement, the GAA and other sporting organisations, the credit union movement and ordinary grassroots activists across this island. The recent cycle of economic growth and recession demonstrates the interdependent nature of the economy, north and south. The establishment of the Northern Committee of NAMA, dealing with €5 billion worth of loans, demonstrates the level of our interdependence. I believe that for too long the economy of the border counties has been the victim of the changing tides of cross-border trade. This level of volatility and instability undermines the economy of the community living along the border. And we need to develop joint processes that will create the stability vital to sustainable development. On a national level, there is no advantage to having two competing economic development agencies vying with each other for foreign direct investment. It is counterproductive, it confuses investors, and it drives down value as we compete to provide the cheapest option. As one US investor recently said in relation to the North, and I quote, because I was there when he said it, "It is hard to get excited about a marketplace and labour pool of 1.5 million people. But when you look at 6 million people, then it does get interesting." So we need to plan our economy on an all-Ireland basis. The plan must identify how to use our assets, our people our universities, and our reputation to grow the economy in a sustainable and beneficial way. And I believe we don't have the luxury of a long time to ponder this. We're in the middle of the greatest economic challenge to our nation, and we need to act quickly and strategically. The decisions we arrive at will have implications for generations to come. So let's not repeat the past. Let's not circle the wagons. Let's look at how we grow the economy and how we can deliver for everyone. We are told that statistically the recession is over, but anyone who believes that has to be living in cloud cuckoo land. We have close to 500,000 people unemployed in Ireland, some 450,000 of them in this state. Emigration from our country is now being measured once again in the tens of thousands per year. And nowhere is it worse than here in County Donegal, which even during the Celtic Tiger years did not enjoy the benefits of the economic upturn to the extent of other parts of the state. Businesses of all sizes are closing. Families are struggling with massive mortgage debt. People dependent on social welfare are being pushed further into poverty. Our public services are subject to cuts that are challenging their ability to meet basic needs in health and education. Alongside that, we have the spectacle of the bankers walking away with super huge golden handshakes. Over 70% of the population live in debt on a week-to-week basis, year-by-year basis, and the top 5% of the population held 40% of the state's wealth, while those in the lowest 10% household income group struggle to get by on less than €158 per week. The vast majority of people see and understand clearly where the responsibility for all this lies. And I think there is a myth that everyone in Ireland was having a wild party during the course of the Celtic Tiger years. This is untrue. It is also insulting to the vast majority of people. And I think it is important to point this out, because if we forget what happened in the very recent past, we are liable to repeat the same mistakes. There were alternative roads to follow, roads that we now need to travel. The question we have to ask now is not just what to do next, but how well equipped are the people of Ireland to address the huge problems that we face. The growing gap between the haves and the have-nots, the rewarding of private greed at the expense of the public good, the failure to think strategically and in the long-term interests of the citizens needs to end. As always, partition complicates matters. In the North, we are tied to the British Exchequer, and our Executive and Assembly are denied fiscal autonomy. We do not have revenue-raising powers and are dependent on a block grant from London, which is based on the Barnett formula, a population statistic-based formula rather than need, and which takes no account of the legacy of partition and decades of underfunding by the British government. In the 6 counties, Catholics remain twice as likely as Protestants to be unemployed, 100,000 children in relative poverty and 44,000 children living in severe poverty. Of the 20 areas in the North suffering highest levels of deprivation, 17 are nationalist. We are now faced with a massive reduction in the block grant to the North. In this situation, we in the Executive and Assembly must battle to protect public services from cuts. It is a huge challenge. The current situation emphasises, as never before, the need for the Executive and the Assembly to have fiscal autonomy and for the economy in the North to be more closely integrated with the rest of Ireland. Tom Pollan is here in the audience, and even though things are difficult, I'm always very conscious, and I've actually quoted this on a number of occasions in the course of recent weeks, of the poem that Tom wrote called "Of a Difference It Makes," which is about the first 50 years of Unionist rule in the North, when during that time the only piece of legislation which nationalists could get passed was the Wild Birds Act. Yes, it's true. And I think the fact that I am now in a government with 4 other Sinn Féin ministers and also Alec Atwood there from the SDLP alongside our Unionist colleagues, dealing with huge budgets and able to take huge decisions and putting legislation through the Assembly, that clearly shows how things have changed. And it also clearly shows how correct Tom Pollan was. And I'm honoured that he's with us this evening. So the effects of recession are worsened, and our ability to respond effectively is hampered by the existence of two currencies, two different tax and social welfare regimes, two sets of public services, and all the inefficiency and duplication that entails. I need not tell people in County Donegal, the neighbouring county to my own, about the disruptive effect of partition on the border counties themselves. Greater cross-border cooperation and integration is an economic necessity. And I think it's good that we can say, as we have done, that, for example, I will stand on the new bypass at Newry, God spares me, on the 29th of this month with the Taoiseach and with Conor Murphy, our Minister for Regional Development, and open the last stretch of that road to Dublin to dual carriageway status, which means people in Belfast can then travel from Belfast to Dublin in something like around 95 minutes. And I'm told go to Cork by that route in 4 hours, which is incredible. Also, the commitment of Irish Government money for the building of the new A5 road from County Monaghan to the northwest gateway of Derry and Letterkenny in County Donegal. That's a project that will come on stream in the next couple of years and will be a hugely important piece of infrastructure, particularly for people west of the Bann who've always felt neglected. The A5 also, the opening up of that road from Belfast to Larne with Irish Government money to ensure that the haulage companies can gain access to Europe along the Eastern Corridor is another very important development. Another very important development is the building of the satellite radiotherapy unit at Altagelvin Hospital to treat people from both Derry and County Donegal who are suffering from cancer rather than having to travel long journeys to Galway, Dublin or to Belfast. So these are practical examples of what can be done, but all of that, I believe, needs to be intensified because that saves money and uses and utilises resources in the interests of everyone. So my party has continually raised the issue of duplication of an administration in an island the size of ours, and I don't believe we can sustain such duplication. We have two health systems, two education systems, two arts councils, two sports bodies, three bodies with responsibility for tourism, and as I already highlighted, two competing economic development agencies. We have patients and families in the north having to travel to England for treatment that is available in Dublin. We have patients in Letterkenny, as I said, travelling to Dublin when the same services are available in Derry. So the border has a negative impact on all communities who live along it. Two currencies, two tax systems, and a myriad of issues which affect citizens' everyday existence, things like wages, pensions, benefits, terms and conditions. All of these are daily bugbears for people living in this region, and especially for those who have to cross the invisible border to work in the other jurisdiction. These are only examples of duplication of administration, and while they have a cost implication, the lack of coordination also impacts on the quality of service. To get the best out of our public spending, we need to end this duplication and competition and develop and deliver coordinated services on an all-Ireland basis. The North-South Ministerial Council, which I am very proud to be a member of, and the all-Ireland bodies are doing good work in this regard. For example, Intertrade Ireland has been a phenomenal increase in the level of trade now between North and South as a result of the establishment of that institution, which came and flowed directly from the Good Friday Agreement, which both John Hume, myself and others were involved in. Both in terms of democratic governance in Ireland, North and South, East and West, and in terms of the economy of the island, I believe that we need to be bold in our thinking, and we need to aim high. The theme, reform in the Republic, for me, does not mean tinkering with two partitioned political and economic systems on our small island. The Irish republicanism I believe in holds that a national republic has yet to be achieved. It holds that it is futile to speak of renewing the Republic or reforming the Republic without addressing the need to end partition and to bring together all of the people of Ireland. And to achieve this through purely peaceful and democratic means is, I believe, a flag that we can all rally to. We need a national debate on the desirability of Irish unity and on how it can be brought about. That debate must of necessity involve unionists. I reject the view that to even speak of unity is damaging or backward-looking or a threat to the institutions established under the Good Friday Agreement and the St Andrews Agreement. The institutions that I am now part of are rock solid, and Peter Robinson and I have agreed that no matter what happens out on the streets, we are going to maintain those institutions and that we are going to continue to build in the sure knowledge that we are ultimately going to be successful. And I find that very, very encouraging. The Good Friday Agreement provides an agreed mechanism for bringing about the reunification of Ireland. Unity is not an issue of the past, it is a live issue of the present, and I firmly believe the direction in which we are all ultimately heading. How best and how soon to reach that goal is the question we need to address. When Ian Paisley and I sat down for the first time, one of the first things he said to me, and it's an exact quote, "Martin, we can rule ourselves. We don't need these people coming over from England telling us what to do." And you can imagine what I was saying under myself when he said that. But he's absolutely right, and Ian Paisley has spoken very powerfully, and I think made a massive contribution to the success of this process. His speeches in the South, in the aftermath of the first North-South Ministerial Council, at the Boyne, the things his wife said, the need to bring down the barriers, end the old hatreds. And I believe he actually is, sincere and very genuine about all of that, is something that we can build on. In the aftermath of the announcement of the City of Culture for Derry, within half an hour of the announcement, my mobile phone rang, and it was Ian Paisley. He says, "I'm just ringing to congratulate you." He says, "It's great. Tell all of the team it's wonderful. It's great for the young people, and whatever I can do to help make this a success, I will help." So I find all of that hugely encouraging for the future. So the other point I think that should be considered by the Irish government is that a start could be made next year by granting to Irish citizens in the 6 counties the right to vote in the presidential election. The current Uachtaráin Nahéireann is a native of Belfast, but if she had lived there at the time of her election, she wouldn't have been able to vote for herself. So provision should be made for such voting rights, not only for citizens in the north, but also for Irish citizens living abroad. Voting rights are granted by many states to their citizens living abroad within a reasonable period from their leaving the home country. At a time of renewed mass emigration, it would be a real recognition of the importance and value of our recent exiles if such rights were granted. And of course, Patrick MacGill was, after all, one of our exiles forced out by poverty. So we need a rebuilt Irish economy, an all-Ireland economy. We need strategies for saving and creating jobs, reforming the tax system to ensure the wealthy are paying their fair share, eradicating public waste and public spending, such as exorbitant executive salaries, drawing up a realistic debt repayment structure on the basis of a growing economy that will grow if it is invested in, and fully regulating a new finance system with necessary secure measures like stronger capital requirements for banks and the supervision of credit rating agencies. All of this should be done with the aim of building an economy which serves the people. This would provide the basis for a transformed, equitable and efficient health service, education with access for all, decent and affordable housing, sound social welfare support for everyone who needs it, and security for our older citizens. A political system in which careerism for personal gain has, for some, come before commitment to public service must look seriously at itself to ensure our island economy is run not on the basis of individual greed, but the good of all. We need to renew our commitment to public service and to the common good. When we as a people have achieved great things in the past, we have done so because individuals put the nation before themselves. That is the spirit of the 1916 proclamation of the Republic and the democratic programme of the first Dáil Éireann. For me, renewing the Republic means applying the principles of those documents to our own time. It means unity, equality and lasting peace for all the people who share this island. It means building an Ireland of equals. This 30th Patrick MacGill Summer School gathers as we enter the decade which marks the centenary of a number of defining events in Irish history, including the Great Lockout of 1913, the Easter Rising, the Battle of the Somme, the Ulster Covenant, the Partition of Ireland. Nobody should be afraid of commemorating or debating these landmarks in our history. It is right to recognise the heroism of those who stood for the vision of the Irish Republic articulated on Easter Sunday 1916, a republic that pledged religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and all of its parts, cherishing all of the children of the nation equally. The proclamation remains a living testimony to the vision and commitment of the leaders of the 1916 Rising, and it continues to represent a charter for change for Irish Republicans. It spells out the unfinished business and what is required to complete it. To build the united, independent Ireland of equals, it invites us once again to bring together all strands of Irish nationalism, republicanism and the labour movement. It challenges us to become persuaders, to reach out the hand of friendship to all who share this island with us, particularly unionists, to build new alliances, to devise and develop new strategies and shared positions, and to build and broaden support for this objective. It's also right to recognise in the period ahead the sacrifice of those Irishmen who fought in the First World War. And I'm very glad Paddy Hart is here tonight. I've known Paddy far too long, for a very, very long time. And some of the darkest days in Derry, and I'm talking about way back in the 70s, Paddy was one of the few politicians that was prepared to venture over the border and into the city to talk to us. And he never had an attitude of, well, we're not going to talk to Sinn Féin, or we're not going to talk to the IRA. We'll talk to everybody to find out what can be done. And I've always admired him for that. And I know that the work that he's involved in is something that is very important to him. And I think he's probably very pleased that I'm saying what I'm saying this evening. And while some may question the value of the actions of those who went to war, no one can set aside the scale of loss or doubt the personal tragedy. Republicans have no wish to erase the memory of their bravery or their part in Irish history. Many working-class Irishmen fought in the British Army at that time because of the unrelenting poverty that they and their families experienced. Their motivation and their experience were articulated by Tom Kettle, an Irish national volunteer who shortly before his death at the Somme in September 1916 wrote these lines to his daughter. Know that we fools, now with the foolish dead, died not for flag, nor king, nor emperor, but for a dream born in a herdsman's shed, and for the secret scripture of the poor. Among the courageous Irishmen who gave their lives in that war also were those who fully believed in their actions and the choices they took. Their sacrifice and their loss are no less worthy of remembrance. The experiences of Republicans, Nationalists, Unionists and all others form part of our collective memory. They are part of who we are as a community and as a nation. And while we must remember these events, we also must critically engage with our past. The past 100 years, while a fraction of the life of the nation was taken up by partition, divergence, exclusion and conflict, these failures must be consigned to the past. And I believe we're on the right road. I believe we're doing that at the moment. I believe that we're now set on a course towards unity, convergence, inclusion and lasting peace. And this is not a bland aspiration. In this way, we will deliver equality, prosperity, reconciliation for all our people in all their diversity. In this way, we will build a nation of which our children can be proud and a republic worthy of the name. An old Indian once said, he was a negotiator too, negotiating with the white man who came from the east, something which I think we should bear in mind as we go forward in terms of those who would try to destabilise all of the enormous progress that we've made in recent times. And it's something that I believe in, absolutely. And they're very simple words. He said, we suffer the mouse to play, and when the wind blows in the woods, we fear not. And we fear not as we move forward, because the events that John Hume has been involved in, the events that I have been involved in, and indeed many others, including unionist leaders in recent times, has transformed the situation in the north. What happened at Ardoyne distorts the big picture. But what happened in Ardoyne is not the big picture. What we're doing is the big picture. And sticking together in the institutions, continuing to make the institutions work, building civilised and cordial relationships with each other, whatever about the past, that is the future for me. That's what I set out to do when I made a real effort to build a friendship with Ian Paisley, and I regard Ian Paisley as a friend of the peace process, and I regard Ian Paisley as my friend. I too regard Peter Robinson as a friend of the peace process, and I do regard Peter Robinson as a friend. So things have changed. Progress is unstoppable, and we are going to be victorious in the end.